I never imagined that the most important day of my life would begin with a lie. If someone had told me a year earlier that I would walk down the aisle wearing a wedding dress instead of the tailored suit hanging in my closet, I would have laughed, shaken my head, and called them crazy. But sometimes the biggest transformations don't begin with a choice. They begin with one small secret that refuses to stay hidden. And by the time I realized what was happening, every mirror was showing me someone I couldn't stop becoming. Before this story reaches its ending, you'll discover why my expensive wedding suit was left untouched forever, why my bride smiled when she saw me wearing white lace instead of black wool, and why I never wanted to be him again after that unforgettable day. My name is Ethan, and for almost 30 years I lived exactly the way everyone expected me to. I had a steady job, good friends, a beautiful fiancée named Claire, and a wedding scheduled only 3 months away. Everything looked perfect from the outside. I had already picked out an expensive charcoal wedding suit that fit me perfectly. Every relative complimented how sharp I looked during the final fitting. My father proudly said I looked like a real gentleman. I smiled. I thanked everyone. But inside, something felt strangely unfinished. It wasn't because I didn't love Claire. I loved her more than anyone in the world. She made every ordinary day feel exciting. She accepted my awkward jokes, my quiet personality, and my obsession with keeping everything organized. The only thing she didn't know was the one secret I had protected since I was 16. Whenever I was completely alone, I sometimes imagined what beautiful dresses felt like. It wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was curiosity mixed with comfort, something I never fully understood myself. I never dared buy anything feminine. Instead, I secretly watched fashion shows online, admiring elegant gowns, delicate fabrics, graceful movements, and bridal collections. Every time I closed my laptop, guilt rushed back in. You're getting married, I reminded myself. Forget these thoughts. For years, I believed marriage would erase those feelings forever. I was wrong. One Saturday afternoon, Claire invited me to help her choose accessories for her wedding dress. She wanted my opinion because she said I always noticed tiny details everyone else ignored. Inside the bridal boutique, everything sparkled. White satin, soft lace, long flowing veils, elegant heels. The entire shop smelled like fresh flowers and expensive perfume. While Claire disappeared into the fitting room, the owner smiled warmly at me. You must be the groom. I nodded. She laughed. You've been staring at these dresses longer than most brides. I immediately looked away. I appreciate good craftsmanship. She smiled knowingly, but didn't say another word. Claire stepped out wearing a breathtaking gown. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. She looked incredible. As she twirled in front of the mirror, she asked, "What do you think?" "You look perfect." She walked closer. "So, why do you look nervous?" "I don't know. You've seemed distracted lately." "I'm just stressed about the wedding." She kissed my cheek. "We'll get through it together." Those words stayed in my mind for days. Together. She always said together. A week later, everything changed because of a rainstorm. Claire asked me to pick up her altered wedding dress from the boutique because she was stuck at work. When I arrived, the owner looked embarrassed. "I'm terribly sorry," she said. "Our delivery van was delayed. Your fiancé's dress isn't ready." I sighed. "No problem." "But," she paused. "We've just received another bridal gown from the same designer. It's nearly identical except for a few details. We need someone to check the measurements before final alterations." I looked confused. "I'm probably not the right person." She smiled playfully. "Actually, your height is surprisingly close." I laughed awkwardly. "You're joking." "Only half joking." She continued smiling. "No one else is available today." Every sensible thought told me to refuse. Every hidden feeling told me to stay. After several long seconds, I quietly whispered, "Just for measurements." She led me into a private fitting room. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear her instructions. "This won't take long." She carefully handed me the dress. The fabric felt impossibly soft, much softer than my wedding suit. For several minutes, I simply stared at it. Then curiosity won. My hands trembled as I stepped into the gown. The zipper slowly closed. The corset tightened gently around my waist. When I finally turned toward the mirror, I froze. I expected embarrassment. Instead, I felt calm. Not excitement. Not shame. Just calm. For the first time in years, the restless feeling inside me disappeared completely. The owner knocked softly. "May I come in?" I hesitated, then quietly answered, "Okay." She entered. Instead of laughing, she simply adjusted one shoulder strap and stepped back. "You wear elegance naturally." I looked at the floor. "I don't understand why this feels." She finished my sentence. "Comfortable." I nodded. She smiled kindly. Many people spend their whole lives running away from comfort because they're afraid of being judged. Those words echoed in my mind long after I changed back into my ordinary clothes. Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about that mirror, about the strange peace I had felt, about how quickly I wanted to experience it again. That night I opened my wardrobe. On one side hung my perfectly tailored wedding suit. Dark, sharp, confident. On the other side was only empty space. Yet, somehow, I couldn't stop imagining a wedding dress hanging there instead. I closed the wardrobe quickly. This has to stop. But the thoughts only grew stronger. The next morning, Claire noticed something different. "You've been smiling." "Have I?" "More than usual." "I guess wedding nerves are fading." She smiled. "I hope so." Then she added something that made my heartbeat stop. "I've always wondered something." "What?" She laughed softly. "If you were born a woman." "What?" "I think you'd have amazing fashion sense." I nearly dropped my coffee. She looked confused. "What?" "Nothing." You went completely pale. "I just wasn't expecting that question." She shrugged. "I don't know why I said it." Neither did I. But somehow, those words stayed with me all day. Because for the first time, someone else had unknowingly opened the same door I had spent years trying to keep locked. And I had no idea that before the wedding day arrived, that door would never close again. The following week became a battle between the life I had carefully built and the thoughts I could no longer silence. Every morning I put on my office clothes, tied my tie with the same routine I had followed for years, and reminded myself that what happened in the bridal boutique meant nothing. It had only been curiosity. A strange moment. Something that would eventually disappear if I ignored it long enough. But it didn't disappear. It became louder. Whenever I passed a clothing shop, my eyes drifted towards the women's displays before I even realized what I was doing. Flowing skirts, elegant blouses, delicate heels, soft colors. Details I had never allowed myself to appreciate openly suddenly seemed impossible to ignore. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't trying to become anyone else overnight. I simply couldn't understand why those clothes made me feel such an overwhelming sense of peace. One evening, Claire found me scrolling through wedding photographs online. "Looking for ideas?" she asked with a smile. I quickly closed the browser. "Just comparing venues." She sat beside me. "You know, you've been hiding something." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "I don't know exactly. But I know you. Whenever something's bothering you, you smile more than usual." I laughed nervously. "Is that supposed to make sense?" "It does to me." She rested her head on my shoulder. "You don't have to carry everything alone." Those words stayed with me all night. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to explain the strange comfort I had felt wearing that wedding gown. I wanted to admit that my expensive wedding suit suddenly felt like someone else's clothes. But fear stopped me. What if she thought I had lied to her? What if she canceled the wedding? What if she looked at me differently forever? Instead, I said nothing. Days passed. Then an unexpected message appeared on my phone. It was from the owner of the bridal boutique. "Your fiancé's alterations are complete. If you'd like to see the finished gown before collection, you're welcome to visit." I stared at the message for several minutes. There was no reason for me to go. Yet, 20 minutes later, I was parking outside the boutique. The owner smiled the moment I walked in. "I had a feeling you'd come. I was just passing by." She raised an eyebrow. "Were you?" I couldn't answer. She unlocked a private fitting room. The dress you tried last week is still here. I shouldn't.
No.
She nodded. You probably shouldn't. Silence filled the room. Finally, she quietly asked, but do you want to? I closed my eyes. Yes. She handed me the dress without another word. This time my hands weren't shaking. They moved almost naturally. The familiar fabric settled against my body. The corset hugged my waist. The long skirt brushed gently around my legs. When I faced the mirror again, something inside me shifted. Last week I had seen a man wearing a dress. This time, I saw someone who looked surprisingly complete. The owner adjusted a loose strand of my hair. You keep staring into the mirror. I don't recognize myself. Or perhaps you finally do. Her words hit harder than she realized. For nearly 10 minutes I simply stood there, breathing slowly. I noticed how differently I carried myself. My shoulders relaxed. My movements became softer without thinking about them. The constant tension I had lived with for years quietly disappeared. No performance. No pretending.
Just calm.
When I changed back into my usual clothes, they suddenly felt heavier. Almost uncomfortable. As I prepared to leave, the owner stopped me. May I ask one question? I nodded. How long have you been pretending? The question caught me completely off guard. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. I looked down at the floor. Since I was a teenager.
She didn't seem surprised.
I've met many people searching for answers. The hardest part isn't trying something new. What is? Believing you deserve to explore without hating yourself. I drove home in complete silence. That evening my wedding suit arrived from its final tailoring. The shop had pressed it perfectly. The jacket looked flawless. The trousers fit exactly. Everything about it was expensive. Everything about it was perfect. Everything about it suddenly felt wrong. I hung it inside my wardrobe. Then I couldn't stop myself. I searched online for wedding dresses. Not because I planned to buy one. Not because I intended to wear one again. I just wanted to look. Hours disappeared. Elegant satin. Beautiful lace. Off-the-shoulder designs. Classic veils. Modern silhouettes. Each photograph fascinated me. I imagined what each dress would feel like. How it would move while walking. How the fabric would catch the light. For the first time in my life, I understood why people spent months choosing the perfect wedding dress. Without noticing, I smiled. Then I heard Claire's voice. What are you looking at? My heart nearly stopped. I slammed the laptop shut. Nothing. She looked at me carefully. You've never hidden your screen from me before. I couldn't think of an excuse. She sat beside me.
Ethan.
Her voice wasn't angry. It was gentle. Please don't lie. I took a deep breath. Every instinct told me to deny everything. Instead, I whispered, I've been confused. About us?
No.
Then about what? I looked into her eyes. I don't know why, but wearing that wedding dress at the boutique made me feel peaceful. She blinked. You wore one. I nodded slowly. It was only for measurements. She remained silent. I've tried to forget it. Another silence. I can't. I expected shouting. Disappointment. Tears. Instead, she quietly asked, Did it make you happy? The question broke every expectation I had. I think. My voice cracked. Yes.
Claire reached for my hand.
I wish you'd told me sooner. You're not angry? I'd rather know the real you than marry someone who's afraid of me. I felt tears filling my eyes. I don't even understand myself. You don't have to understand everything tonight. She smiled sadly. But promise me one thing. Anything. No more pretending. I nodded. I promise. For the first time since our engagement, it felt as though we were truly planning a future together, not by hiding from difficult conversations, but by facing them honestly. Yet neither of us realized that the biggest surprise was still waiting. 2 days later, Claire asked me to come with her for one final fitting. I want her opinion, she said. When we arrived, the boutique owner greeted us warmly. Claire looked around with a mischievous smile. I've actually got a surprise for you. For me? She nodded. I've been thinking ever since our conversation. Before I could ask another question, She disappeared into another room with the owner. A few minutes later, the owner returned carrying a large white garment bag. She placed it gently in front of me. My heart began racing. Claire smiled. I think it's time you stopped wondering what if. Claire looked at me with a calmness that somehow made everything even more emotional. There was no laughter, no judgment, no hesitation. She simply unzipped the garment bag and revealed an elegant ivory wedding dress unlike the one I had tried before. This one wasn't a sample. It wasn't borrowed for measurements. It had been carefully chosen. For who? I whispered, even though part of me already knew the answer. She smiled softly. For the person I fell in love with. I couldn't speak. I thought you wanted a groom. I finally managed to say. I do. She stepped closer and took both of my hands. But a groom isn't defined by a suit. I fell in love with your kindness, your patience, your heart. Clothes don't change any of that. Tears blurred my vision. I've spent years trying to be the man everyone expected. And were you happy? I looked down.
No.
Were you happy in the dress? Yes. She nodded. That's all I needed to know. The boutique owner quietly left us alone. The room became completely silent. Claire gently lifted the dress. Would you like to try this one? My breathing became uneven. This feels too real. It is. I don't know if I'm ready. No one ever is. She smiled. You don't have to become someone new today.
She paused.
You only have to stop pretending to be someone you're not. Those words broke the last wall inside me. I slowly reached for the dress. This time there was no guilt. No panic. Only curiosity. Claire helped me step into it with incredible patience. She carefully fastened every button, adjusted every layer, smoothed every fold. Neither of us rushed. Neither of us spoke very much. It felt strangely peaceful. When the final zipper closed, she stepped behind me. You ready? I nodded. She slowly turned me towards the mirror. I froze. The person looking back wasn't perfect. My shoulders were still broad. My face still carried traces of the man I had always been. Yet somehow, for the first time in my entire life, I smiled at my own reflection without forcing it. Claire smiled too. There you are. I looked at her. What if everyone hates this? Some people probably will. What if my parents walk away? They might. What if our friends laugh? Some probably won't understand. Every answer sounded terrifying. So, why aren't you scared? She squeezed my hand. Because I'd rather spend one honest life with you than a lifetime with someone pretending. Those words stayed with me for days. The wedding was now less than 3 weeks away. News traveled quickly. My parents noticed I had canceled the final fitting for my wedding suit. My father immediately called. What's going on? I need to talk to you. We met the following evening. He looked worried. I heard you canceled your suit. I did. Why? I struggled to find the words. I don't think I'm going to wear it. His forehead wrinkled. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. I've been discovering things about myself. His expression slowly changed from confusion to concern. This is wedding stress. I thought so too. It'll pass. It hasn't. He leaned forward. Son, I don't think wearing that suit feels honest anymore. Silence filled the room. What are you trying to tell me? I looked directly into his eyes. I want to wear a wedding dress.
He stared at me.
Neither of us moved. Nearly an entire minute passed. Finally, he stood up. I don't understand. I know. I raised a son. You did. So where did this come from? It was always there. His voice became quiet. You never told me. I was terrified. He slowly sat back down. I don't know what to say. You don't have to understand today. Another long silence. Then something happened I never expected.
He sighed.
I've seen you smiling these last few weeks. I looked surprised. You have? I haven't seen that smile since you were a little boy. His eyes became emotional. I don't understand what's happening. I know, but... He paused. I don't want fear to be the reason my child hides from me. I couldn't hold back my tears. He stood up again. This time, he hugged me, not because everything suddenly made sense, not because every question had been answered, but because love had spoken before understanding. That hug healed something I didn't even realize was broken. Over the next 2 weeks, everything changed. Claire and I redesigned parts of the ceremony together. Instead of arguing over traditions, we created new ones. We chose matching bouquets, matching jewelry, matching shoes. Instead of bride and groom, our invitations simply celebrated two people promising their lives to each other. Some relatives canceled. Some friends stopped calling. Others surprised us with overwhelming support. One evening, my best friend Daniel came over carrying a large box. "I figured you might need these." Inside were elegant bridal heels. "You?" I laughed through tears. "You bought these?" He shrugged. "I don't know anything about heels." "I can tell. They were recommended. They're actually beautiful." He smiled. "I've spent 15 years calling you my best friend." "I know. I'm not planning to stop because of different clothes." Moments like that gave me strength. The night before the wedding, I opened my wardrobe one final time. On the left hung the charcoal wedding suit, perfectly pressed, never worn. On the right hung my wedding dress, elegant, graceful, waiting. I stood there for several minutes. The suit represented every expectation I had carried. The dress represented every truth I had finally accepted. I gently touched the sleeve of the suit. "Thank you," I whispered. It had protected me through many years, but it no longer represented who I wanted to be. I closed the wardrobe. The next morning, sunlight filled the room. Instead of nervousness, I felt peace. Hair was carefully styled. Makeup was applied naturally. Every step felt strangely familiar instead of frightening. When I finally slipped into the wedding dress, something remarkable happened. I stopped wondering whether I looked convincing. I stopped worrying whether people approved. I simply felt present. Outside, guests were taking their seats. Music began playing. Claire waited at the end of the aisle with the biggest smile I had ever seen. The doors slowly opened. A quiet murmur spread through the room. Some faces showed surprise. Some showed confusion. Some smiled immediately. Others needed time. I kept walking. Not quickly, not timidly. With every step, years of fear seemed to disappear behind me. I wasn't walking away from the person I had been. I was walking toward the life I finally wanted to live. When I reached Claire, she took my hands and whispered with tears in her eyes, "You look beautiful." "So do you." The officiant smiled warmly. "Today isn't about tradition. Today is about honesty, courage, and love." We exchanged vows we had written ourselves. "I promise never to ask you to hide. I promise never to hide from you again." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. As we exchanged rings, I glanced toward the front row. My father was crying. Not from disappointment, from pride. After the ceremony, he hugged both of us and quietly said, "I came here expecting to lose a son." He smiled through his tears. Instead, I watched my child find happiness. The untouched wedding suit remained in its garment bag forever. Years later, whenever people asked why it had never been worn, I would simply smile, because that suit wasn't abandoned. It completed its purpose. It reminded me how far I had traveled before finally choosing honesty over expectation. The wedding dress didn't erase my past. It didn't magically solve every challenge. Life still brought difficult conversations, curious strangers, and moments of doubt. But every time I looked at our wedding photographs, I remembered one simple truth. The happiest day of my life wasn't the day I wore a dress. It was the day I stopped letting fear decide who deserved to stand at the altar. And that is why my wedding suit was never worn. Because the person it had been made for quietly disappeared long before the wedding day arrived. And the person who walked down the aisle finally felt at home in every step.